Welcome to the We Founders podcast. We are women entrepreneurs, founders, and investors sharing our stories about how we raise funds, invest, and build our businesses from the Western Balkans. I'm your host, Gaia Montelatici, General Partner at Studio X Ventures.
It's really a pleasure to join you and to be part of this initiative that I read about a little bit since I've been invited. And I think it's great to see things like that happening in Serbia. So thank you for having me.
We're really excited. Thank you for spending this hour with us tonight. Tell us a little bit about how it is to develop professionally in data science, and what have been your challenges, what have been the opportunities you saw in this, and how do you navigate the space, because it's definitely one of the most emerging actually opportunities.
Yeah, sure, that's for sure.
In these days when our economy is digitalizing so much faster.
Yeah, and the data's everywhere. Well, my journey was somehow fairly straightforward and natural. It just led from learning programming in high school and doing computer engineering at the Faculty of Operation Science at the University of Belgrade, after which I left and moved to UK, where I got the opportunity to work as an assistant at one of the local universities, and another opportunity to pursue my interest for statistics. When I was studying at Belgrade University, I was lucky to have as one of my lecturers Srđan Bogosavljević, who really inspired me with the idea about learning to use statistics and to play with data. And basically, after that grad degree, I really wanted to pursue further studying in the field of statistics. And I was searching, and I found an opportunity to do a PhD at Manchester University in applied statistics. But because my background wasn't in statistics, but rather computing, I had to do masters first as a part of my PhD, where I got introduced to some new programming languages for statistics, and one of them was R, that I fell in love straight away. And really, ever since, I've been looking into working on projects that use statistics for good, and that field really has evolved into something that's today called data science. It's also clearly emerged with all this data that is around us, and it's gained really massive popularity. But the definition of data science, it's really tricky to kind of point figure and say this is exactly what data science is. It's really a science about using data for good, starting from collecting data to organizing data, which means being a data engineer, to applying statistical modeling, to just basically sometimes even using just simple exploratory analysis, like just visualizing and trying to see if you can gain some insights from the data. So really, data science is popular science, and everybody wants to get their hands into it, especially young generation, because there are so many opportunities that data science provide now. There are many jobs that can be more efficiently and effectively done when applying data science, which is another kind of appeal to this discipline. And it can be applied to really any discipline, which is a really nice part of data science. Like from journalism, where we see nowadays, especially with papers being online, where people can follow certain stories interactively, where stories can be visualized and data not just presented with boring, dry figures, but rather with some nice, fancy visualizations that could really evoke much more into the story than just regular black and white letters and numbers. So yeah, it's a really exciting field and exciting time of the human existence to be part of it, I would say.
So can you tell us a little bit about what are the achievements maybe you're most proud of, projects you've been parts of, even internationally, that really for you are the data for good that you are talking about?
Sure. Well, one of the projects I'm certainly really proud of and through which I've learned a lot was constructing the reference growth charts for Saudi Arabian children and adolescents, which has now been adopted by World Health Organization and their local health authority. So basically, they gathered the data over the time, population data, and we had to identify using statistical modeling what are their centiles, i.e. their growth charts, so that they can monitor based on their own population rather than standards that the World Health Organization has proposed based on most of the time children who are growing in Western cultures rather than locally, such as in this case, Saudi Arabian. So that was really an interesting project for which I had to learn a lot. There were loads of questions posed by medical people that I didn't have answers straight away. And you have to do a lot of research, and you have to really rely on connections and networking. And you really kind of have to break that, if you ever had any shyness of thinking like, oh, this could be a really dumb question. You really need to be able to prepare yourself to say, so even if it is, I will just have to find the answer and I have to ask. So you kind of often search on the Google, on over the internet, but most of the time you wouldn't necessarily find the right answer, or you might have some ideas, but you would not have certainty that that idea would hold. And it's really important to be able to communicate with people your idea, because sometimes it's also when you're working on certain projects, you get idea and you think, oh, that's great, but it's all kind of most of the time muddled. And the clarity really would come only after you communicating those ideas to somebody. It's great if you have people who are experts in the field and you can communicate those ideas with them, because you might get probably more straightforward feedbacks. But even just certain platforms and certain conferences where you basically can present what you're doing and present the problems you envisage and you're bumping into, a really good way of just clarifying what you're doing and where you're up to. So really, to be a data scientist, it's, I would say, based on this project that I'm pointing in particular, important not just to be good at manipulating data and modeling the data, but it's very, very important to be a good communicator, to network with people, to know how to present your ideas, and to finally present your findings to people from a specific domain, rather than you're just colleagues in a field of statistics or data science.
Thank you, Tanya, for actually this comment, because a lot of time when we think about data science, we mystify a lot of what it is, and we feel at times also intimidated about what it is and how to use it. And we actually sometimes detach from it and don't know at the best how to actually inform what we do in our daily lives and businesses and interactions by how we read, right? That data. So so it's great to have in you that balance, you know, where you are the scientist on one hand and use all the algorithms that we have no idea, no clue how you get to, and then on the other hand, you know, how you use them and into live relationships and interactions. So I think that that's actually one of the biggest benefits in the application of the algorithms that you as scientists create and come forward. So in all your experience, you've been working with, as I can see, with academia, with governments, the international level, but you've also volunteered a lot. You've embarked in a lot of actually mission-driven projects of your own, and you've, as we said before, founded, for example, Sister Analytics with a clear goal to diversify the industry and the space of data science and data analytics. Why is that? How will data analytics and data science be better with more diversity in it?
Sure. Well, basically, I feel very passionate about this programming language that I use in statistics, which was built for statistician, but has now evolved into a programming language for statistical data analysis that can be used for people who are not statisticians, and it's called R, and I'm part of this R community, and it's a very vivid community and very welcoming and open, and I can only say praises about this community. And through this community, I have been volunteering for an initiative called Forwards, R Forwards, where we basically try to encourage people from minority groups, especially women, to become bigger part of community who are not just the users, but actually creator of new algorithms, new approaches, etc., etc. So being part of that, and then taking a step back from working in academia, 3 years ago, I moved with my family from UK over to Serbia with a little girl who was 3 at the time. And I really wanted to devote more time to her, and you kind of priorities change in time. And I just felt it was a time in my life where I could really push myself more deeper into helping develop communities that would encourage not just women in statistics, but women in all walks of lives in different fields to empower themselves through application of data in their own disciplines. And based on those interactions that I had through another very great initiative, Our Ladies, for which I've started a chapter back in Manchester in UK. And then when I moved to Belgrade, I started with Katarina Kozmina here in Belgrade as well. And then another one started in Novi Sad, which is a great way of really including more women in applying and using data science. I realized that it would be really good to actually introduce data science to women who are not necessarily, as I said, statistician, and who don't necessarily use statistical programming languages, but rather are intrigued in how they can make their work better and more efficient through application of data. So from that idea, basically grown idea about setting up Sister Analyst.
And based on your experience, what did you see coming out of all of these activities here in Serbia with Our Ladies, with Sister Analytics? What kind of projects came out of this?
Well, in terms of when I moved and started Our Ladies, more women, women started getting intrigued with this programming language R, and started coming to the meetups. And then Katarina and I started another initiative where we try to engage young generation of people, like high school children, to get into data science, to be introduced to the opportunity of looking data science as a discipline, or really seeing how they can even learn to become, I don't know, medical experts, but with the help of data, how they can make their studies in the future better and more interesting and with more opportunity for them. And when we started Sister Analysis a year ago, one of the first projects we applied was to educate local journalists to do data journalism, and we created for them a web platform called our Toolbox, through which we introduced some educational material showing them how they can basically incorporate data journalism in a transparent and reproducible manner. So that's another idea that we really want to kind of groom, if you like. We want really people to realize that one of the benefits of using data is not just using data as it is to get the new insights, but to do things in a more transparent and open way, because everybody should have access to open data. And when you have access to open data, it doesn't mean like the data just needs to be put somewhere on the shelf, like in the libraries. You obviously need to learn how to read and how to use the data. And that's one of our missions as well, to democratize the data. So it's not just the idea about opening the data, but democratizing all the process about using data. And really, to be able to do that, things need to be done when somebody does use data and does come to certain findings and present them, it needs to be done in an open, transparent, and reproducible manner. Because if you create something that is of benefits, not just to you, but to local communities, that product, if you like, that you come across to, could be developed further. So you should make it reproducible. You should make people be able to add the value to something you have already created and make it better and for another good. And that is one of our missions. So through our toolbox, we really wanted to introduce local journalists, not just to programming language R, which is open source, so it's freely available to everybody. We also wanted to introduce them to GitHub, so basically that they can put things on the GitHub and people can easily access and reproduce their article and maybe apply their analysis to their local communities with their own local data, etc., etc. So that was one of the projects we did recently.
So you've for sure seen a lot of interest, and you've encountered a lot of actually curiosity in Serbia in doing this. How do you see this community? I mean, you've been working in the UK, and how would you compare this scene, how it is evolving here to the UK? We know that generally Serbia and the Western Balkans are a talent hub. Usually people here are very, very talented in STEM, in engineering and all of that. How is your experience with these women, young people encountering data science?
The curiosity is the same, if not even greater here, because people clearly feel need for creating bigger and better opportunities for themselves. Although saying that now with this pandemic, I think that more or less going to be the case all around the world from now on. But there is clearly that hunger here that does exist in Serbia, especially from young people. But what I found and what I'm stumbling across in Serbia is that there is that stigma that you really need to be technical if you want to use the data. So it's not much progress done in opening data science field into social studies, into law, into art, into I don't know, literature study, etc., etc. And that's something that I think slowly is moving. Recently, I've done also a workshop at the University of Belgrade with the Faculty of Philosophy, where I literally was showing them how they can do reproducible research and what is the importance of all of that. especially in their domain, the universities, with lots of research that they are doing and they want to share in between. So that is one of the things that I find difficult to kind of break the barrier. It's still kind of seen sometimes a little bit elitist, that only people who have certain degrees would be able to apply and do data science. It's good that you can see lots of master degrees popping up around Serbia for data science, but they often require technical backgrounds, so that people who perhaps have studied sociology would not necessarily be able to dive into it straight away into master degree like that. So there are certain things that still need to kind of level out around here in Serbia to make it more applicable and more adaptable and more approachable for people who are not from, as I said, that technical background. But things are slowly moving on, and I think people realizing that really through this informal way of learning is also possible to get there, to actually learn how to apply data science to your field of studying or your field of work. So I think that's why the initiatives like Our Ladies, like workshops that Sister Analyst does are very important and have great value for those reasons.
That's really very interesting. So, because this is very much in parallel with what we see in the startup world, that, you know, mainly there's, you know, software engineers and technical talents coming to build some startups, right? And the idea is that you have to be that in order for you to bring forward startups. But I think that there's definitely a culture shift already happening in the sense of, okay, what are the applications of a data science that already is there and that already exists? So, you know, if you were to, for example, just sort of summarize some of the skills or the characteristics that someone needs to have or develop to get into data analysis without coding, what would you say they need to have?
They need to have curiosity, and they need to have skill of asking questions themselves first, and then develop the skill to communicate those questions to people around them, because sometimes the answers might exist already around, but they don't know how to get to them. Or perhaps they can then put into connections, which is why I'm saying networking is so important, into connection with somebody who will be able to guide them and point out how to get those answers. Like you don't need to be a statistician or to learn about basic statistical algorithms of just basic statistics such as mean and standard deviations to kind of get those basic insights from your websites. You can just apply Google Analytics nowadays. So really it's important to kind of know what you want to find out. Is there a data available for it? If there isn't, who should I ask? Where should I go? And if I do have data, what do I do with it? How do I use it? Is there anybody who might already have some program that I could just apply and get some answers from this data I have collected? So really, it's the curiosity and asking questions which is most important. And really, when you were talking about that cultural shift, it's important for that cultural shift to happen in many organizations. And that was one of the biggest shock for me when I came back to Serbia, to see how undeveloped our administrative system is, where I had to pile documents and documents to, when I got my property here in Serbia, to get tax. Yeah. So rather than just connecting all online and, with a click saying documents are all in or whatnot, you had to go from door to door and knock on the doors over and over to ask, has your case been processed, etc., etc., till eventually somebody would arbitrarily say, this is okay, or maybe you need to provide some more pieces of information, etc., etc. So there is also fear here for us that in Serbia, that all of a sudden somehow all this system would collapse if we digitalize and make it more data driven, which is not the case. I spoke to many women who work, it often is a women, I'm afraid, who work in those offices and who are piled with papers and who would love to be able to have everything at the button, at the click of the button available for them, rather than rummaging through the papers and searching where and what. So I think there is that cultural shift that needs to happen in Serbia, that people would not lose jobs. Their jobs will just become more efficient. They would just be shifted into something else. They would have to be obviously trained, but they would still be required. They will still be needed. It's not like once everything's digitalized, everything's going to be automated and people would not be required. So there is that stigma, and in general, in even just ordinary companies, that cultural shift of digitalization would need to happen in terms of like realizing that even needs to start from the reception desk, from person who is at the door, who opens the door to people walking in, asking questions, who they're seeing, when, what, how, why, etc., etc. All those pieces of information can give better insight and provide more efficiency in what and how we do and deliver things.
So you have already actually given us some of the examples of how actually to best apply data science and data analytics in areas here in Serbia. If it were up to you, as I hope it will be, where would you start from in terms of industries, in terms of areas, some examples? What would you do first?
I would first open all governmental data. What we need in Serbia is transparency, and all those fears that people build is based on lack of information. So open data as much as possible. Educate people how to use the data. So not just present them, but create platforms where there would be educational material through the local communities, like local libraries, revitalize them by providing little courses, workshops for elderly generation who are not data literate, not at the level as younger generation is. And basically enable people to get the information easier and quicker, and not to live in the fear of what these new technologies might bring. Like, for example, there is a big fear of, at the moment, from what I can see from social media, about CCTV cameras across the town. And okay, there should be fear if we don't know how that information is going to be used and who's going to use and who's going to have access to them. But providing that kind of information, making things more transparent, it's going to definitely make things better and good for people. They would accept things with more understanding. Once they have better understanding, there is more likely that they would accept changes that are obviously for better and for good. So I would start from government and opening their data and making everything they do more transparent.
This is an incredibly actual, an incredibly contemporary, I would say, issue. And I think it's not debated only in the Western Balkans or Serbia. I think it's debated by, a lot of governments internationally. Mm-hmm. And what we see is done with data, with digital data, by, social networks, governments, and so on and so forth, makes us a little bit nervous at times. So definitely, what does it mean to have transparent data? Who makes it transparent? And how do we know that certain governments use it in the way they say they do, and so on and so forth? What do we as community members, citizens, what have you, know that, right?
Well, a good example is really this COVID data. At the beginning of pandemic, we could access data on Serbian data.org. But all of a sudden, it stopped beginning of April. And the only way we could get some information is go to ECDC. Like, for example, Sister Analyst has developed a website where we follow what's going on with COVID situation in Serbia, creating certain visualizations, etc. And that was one of the problems that we bumped across straight away in the moment where the importance of having data like that was so crucial. It's one of the key points in fighting against COVID, for people to be able to access the data. So we couldn't even access data like that. And that is a really, really big problem in Serbia. Everything is like hidden, everything is hush-hush, almost like, why should people have access to this data? Well, they're health data. We should all have access to it. We should have, well, we do have right to access this data. It's for good of all of us. So medical data should be, I'm not saying obviously that there should be certain data that, it's private and you wouldn't be able to have full access. But certain data like that in terms of hospital equipment, where can you identify certain, specific ventilators that are required in which hospitals, how many, etc. All of those crucial pieces of information that public should be able to have access to, because it does belong to the public. It does belong to the country, to the citizens of the country. And for that reason, I think some of data like that, of that kind, definitely would need to be made more open and more transparent.
But you, Tanya, had done a project exactly about this issue during in April, right, this year?
Yeah, it was with SINS.
What happened with that?
It was really the beginning of March. Since Vladimir Kostić, who works for SINS, managed to get the data about ventilators in Serbia, which was debatable at the time, a question that nobody could give the answers. Are there any? How many? Where? Are they functional? Are they not? What would happen once the COVID hit Serbia, etc. At the time, we also were hearing on the news that government has a very little understanding about the virus, suggesting that women should go shopping to Milan and there was nothing to fear from and about, and we should just carry our normal lives, kind of what COVID type of thing. Only with the sense to visualize this data, to map the data using as a direct results of applying our toolbox visualization of data using R in an open, transparent way, pointing out where and how many ventilators were available in Serbia, and the figures were not good, really, they were poor. Only that weekend things started moving on and following, so the article was published Saturday, and the following Sunday, the government was introducing the stricter measures and saying that we should be more worried about the virus, and the school were stopped, etc. So yeah, that is kind of data in action, the way how it should be done in transparent, open way. So we should have data available, journalists who are able to not just access the data with great difficulties at the moment, but be able to access relevant information that is of concern of their citizens easily and freely, and present them in an understandable and easily digestible manner in an open, transparent way. So I'm for that.
Amazing. So what are the projects for 2021? What do you have in the garage?
Well, project for 2021 is really to start kicking off with the courses. And when we started Sister Analyst, we kind of were really gearing to younger generation of women, women who just finishing university or just have recently completed their studies. But now we think, considering the circumstances and situation, that we should really make those courses for all women who want to kind of empower themselves through the application of data and give themselves more opportunities and better prospects for finding new jobs or making their current jobs more efficient and effective. And them to really kind of also, once completing certain courses, mobilize in mentoring younger generation and maybe even senior generations in applying information from the data that is put on like open data and make that kind of move of data democracy bigger and stronger, not just here in Serbia, but really like regionally. So that is kind of a new idea. So basically in the next few weeks, we're going to revamp our website. We're going to put new programs that we're gonna be introducing to, and start basically from there.
I think this is really most important because from what I can see, already in the present, but definitely in the next coming months and years, jobs will require the use of data analytics on a daily basis, and it's going to actually be part of the basic core curriculum of what people will do and how they will operate on, on even their daily lives. So I think that giving the tools already is, it's just an urgency, and we need to understand, the power of the data, but also how to responsibly use it, as you have been, talking all along during our chat. So definitely count on, the Impa Hub.
Thank you.
For the projects.
Definitely.
Because we'll definitely love to work together on this. It's empowerment at all levels, as individuals, as a society, as professionals in whatever we're going to do, either employment or starting our own businesses. So definitely, really, really very much thumbs up.
Great, thank you.
Initiatives. Tanya, thank you so much. I would actually have one last question that I left just for now, but I see there's a couple of questions, and so I want to make sure that that you get them and you can answer them. So Tina says, thank you very much for the interesting Zoom meeting. Well, she has to go. I'll contact more of your Sister Analytics. So here you go. You'll have a contact to see for your projects in 2021. And Sarah is asking, how can we move communities to create impact in society using data science? Whoa, this is a huge question. We've been talking about this a little bit already. But Tanya, what can you add to it?
Well, that is something that really us as individuals would find hard. We really need backup from the government to make this happen. we basically realized what a big issue and problem is the air pollution across Serbia, not just in Belgrade. And there were certain movements that have been done, initiatives where people are measuring the air quality on their own. There is that great initiative, Vazduh Građanina, I think it's called, where you can access this data, but obviously there are issues about the quality of how the data is being collected, etc., etc. But nonetheless, the idea is there that movement is happening. So people are recognizing that is a great issue here that concerns all of us. And the question is how we can access this data, how we can use this data, etc., etc. Sister Analyst ran a little workshop back in March, just before the pandemic started, where we actually shown how it's possible to access such type of data, open data, and make some insight and how you can basically use that information. But really, those would be all kind of small individual instances, should I say, rather than incidents. And really government should and has a great opportunity now to empower people to get back behind their backs in helping them get through all this problem that is going to inevitably happen with loss of jobs, etc., through this pandemic COVID, where people can have better understanding of what's going on through the information gained from the data. But how we can access that data clearly is up to them to make it open. How people can use this data is up to them to develop programs, as I said, using just libraries that are really diminishing and revitalize them into little local community hubs where people can go and meet up, discuss the issues, create meetups, workshops, government introducing programs for educating. As I said, especially senior citizens, they have great concerns about how this data can be used. And basically all people who fall so easily into all those conspiracy theories that don't have any legs whatsoever. And that would be the only way I can see how this could be made is a big social move. You really need to have a government who is willing and who can see how they can empower themselves through the use of data from their own citizens.
Yeah. Is that a little bit of what you mean when you say, going from inclusion into influence in terms of
definitely. It's not just important, like we're often talking about inclusivity and making communities open. And yes, that is great, and we should make them open, but it's really empowering people to be able to use the right tools, to not necessarily even use the tools, just to start thinking in a certain way of how data can make life better, and start making questions, and then by making questions push the government to open certain data. And UNDP is doing good steps in that direction by constantly nudging the government in Serbia of opening certain data and making it available to the citizens. And they do have programs of empowering local communities, but this really needs to be done in a bigger and greater scale by our own government. It's the only way I can see it happening. All those initiatives are great and they need to exist, but we really need to have it as a big, strong wave throughout the country, not just in cities and big towns like Belgrade, Novi Sad, Niš, etc.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of, of a sentence, of a phrase that one of our partners and friends, data scientist from the US, Francesco, says all the time when he refers to, what is artificial intelligence, and he says, people, let's just focus on intelligence, and we need a lot more than that. The artificial is there, don't worry about it.
It's everywhere around us. Yeah, I like that one.
So Maria is asking, how can she get involved with Sister Analytics, the workshops and the courses?
Well, if Maria wants to drop us an email, I will be very happy and glad to get her involved if she's keen. Once we start with the new year and new resolution of really pushing those workshops rolling, as I said, we will need lots of mentors if she would be keen. I don't know, maybe even, I don't know Maria's background, but would she be keen to just join us for enrolling the course and becoming a mentor that way, or does she already have certain background and expertise and experience? Whichever way, we will be open and welcome. That would be great. As I said, we're not just geared empowering women in using data science and AI, but rather also younger generation. So through also initiative ClickR, we've already started that before Sister Analyst actually has been organized and started with its functioning, which is really important for young generation to be introduced to data science as a discipline, not just as a discipline on its own, but really as a discipline that can empower them in, if they want to become archaeologists tomorrow, how they can basically through mapping geodata find more insights into problems that they coming across to. So that's the idea.
So Maria, you can also write to us and we'll put you in contact and, we'll take it.
That would be great. I'm really pleased that we have somebody who is keen to support us and help and join the team. That would be fantastic.
So if there's no more questions, I would ask Tatjana to please leave us with some of her learnings in 2021, if you have some anecdotes to share or what's something that really sticks out this year for you.
For me, it sticks out how actually all those conspiracy theories are easily falling into the ground with no legs, based on the data that is available and people who are enthusiastic about using the data and providing information to those who perhaps are less, I wouldn't use, even though I'm going to say it, but I don't want to say they're lazy to think, but rather they don't know new ways of thinking and new ways of finding the answers, but rather falling into a trap of just adopting whatever comes across it on social media, etc., etc. And of course, I'm really happy about the work of local journalists in Serbia, especially of SINS, that I've been following, and they're doing great work in terms of data visualization. So those are kind of my highlights in terms of during this pandemic, what this data-driven culture has brought to life.
Tatjana, thank you so much. It's been wonderful talking to you, and we'll continue this conversation next year. And I hope that we will collaborate more and bring to life a lot of the projects that you just mentioned.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
Thank you. It was a pleasure really meeting you and being part of your initiative. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, everybody. If you have any questions that we were not able to address today, please write to us, and we will be sure to connect you to Tatjana and answer other questions online for you. Happy New Year, because it's going to be in a couple.
It has to be happier, definitely. So yeah, all the best in 2021 to everybody. Thank you.
See you in 2021.
Thanks a lot. See you soon. Bye.
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 Thank you for following our We Founders podcast. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Listen to our episodes on Podcast.rs and Sounder. And check our websites for updates on wefounders.net.